I still hear that cabin breathe, not the walls creaking, breathing. The kind of slow, patient inhale a living thing makes when it finally senses you in the dark. I left that forest months ago, but last night, the same rhythm pressed against my apartment walls. So if you're listening to this, understand. The cabin didn't stay in the woods. It followed me. The farther Marina Vale drove into the northern woods, the more the world seemed to narrow. The road thinned into a single cracked lane, swallowed by dark pines leaning inward like they were eavesdropping. Her comm unit lost signal 3 times before giving up entirely. The silence in the car felt unnatural, not peaceful, but held, as if the forest were waiting for her to cross some invisible threshold. When the cabin finally emerged from the dim tree line, it looked less like a shelter and more like a relic abandoned by time. Weather-beaten boards sagged inward, the roof slanted as though tired of carrying its own history. The clearing around it felt too still, like the trees were holding their breath. Eloan Gray waited near the porch, slight frame wrapped in a forest green jacket. Her sharp eyes flicked to Marina, then to the tree line, as if checking whether something had followed her in. "You made it farther than most," Eloan said, voice low. "The map didn't help," Marina replied. "Signal cut out miles back." "That's normal," Eloan said, but her clenched jaw suggested otherwise. Inside, the cabin greeted Marina with a scent of cold timber and something faintly smoky, a scent that didn't match the dead stove in the corner. She set down her equipment case and felt the temperature dip immediately, a thin ribbon of cold brushing across her arms. Cashin Rourke, the station's reclusive caretaker, appeared in the doorway with a lantern in hand. His expression carried the same tension as the cabin itself, stretched, worn, quietly fearful. "It's been unstable again," he muttered, nodding toward the diagnostics console. "How unstable?" Marina asked. Cashin stared at the floorboards. "You'll see." As Marina began her assessment, the cabin creaked, slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Not the random settling of wood, more like a floor shifting in response to her movement. She paused, screwdriver in hand, listening. Eloan stepped closer. "You'll hear things, happens a lot lately." "Animals?" Eloan shook her head once. "No." A shiver climbed Marina's spine. Half an hour later, the air changed again. The light filtering through the cabin windows dimmed, though clouds hadn't rolled in. The temperature dropped with startling precision, as though someone had opened a door to a deeper, colder room. Then the sound started. Footsteps, slow, heavy, purposeful, walking a slow circle around the cabin. Marina straightened, heartbeat stuttering. "Eloan, Cashin, do you hear that?" Cashin's lantern trembled in his grip. "No one should be out here," he whispered. "Especially not after dusk." But the steps continued, crunching gravel, brushing through moss, pausing near the back wall before moving again. Marina approached the nearest window, but the glass only reflected her own tense silhouette. The clearing beyond it remained empty. The steps stopped. Silence expanded through the cabin, pressing against her chest. Something in the walls seemed to tighten, wood flexing inward, like the building itself was inhaling. Marina forced a steady breath, though every instinct screamed at her to leave. Whatever lived in this place, it knew she'd arrived. And it wasn't done testing the boundaries, not even close. Marina Vale didn't sleep her first night in the cabin, not because of the cold or the creaking wood or even the suffocating silence that settled after the footsteps vanished. It was the feeling, a subtle, persistent awareness that something hovered just beyond her senses, testing the edges of her thoughts like fingers brushing fabric. At dawn, pale light bled through the warped window frames. Eloan Gray was already outside, scanning the tree line with rigid focus. Cashin Rourke stood near the generator shed, lantern still in hand though the sun had risen. Marina stepped out onto the porch. "Did either of you check the perimeter last night?" Cashin exhaled sharply. "No one checks the woods after dark. Because of animals?" Eloan shook her head. "No, because the woods change." It wasn't the answer Marina wanted, but the seriousness in their eyes told her it wasn't a joke. She returned to the diagnostics console. The system logs were a mess, corrupted timestamps, repeated data strings, strange bursts of static that didn't match any electrical pattern she knew. Every anomaly occurred at the same intervals, right after dusk and just before dawn. As Marina recorded notes, the console flickered. A split-second auditory spike punched through her headset, a whisper, faint but deliberate, not sound, more like breath. She ripped the headset off. "Elowen," she called. "You said the place has been unstable. Tell me what that means." Elowen didn't answer. Instead, she opened a drawer and pulled out an old cassette recorder, battered, dust around the edges of its buttons. "This belonged to the last woman assigned here," she said quietly. "The one who disappeared." Marina's pulse kicked. "Disappeared how?" "Walked into the woods one night," Cashin replied. "Never came back. Search teams found nothing. Not even footprints past the first 30 yards. Marina swallowed. "And you think this is connected to the system failures?" Elowen hesitated. "I think the cabin doesn't like to be alone." Marina set the recorder on the table. "Did she leave anything on this?" "One tape." "Can I listen?" "If you want to sleep less," Elowen said. Still, Marina pressed play. At first, only static. Then a dragging sound, wood against wood, slow and heavy. A woman's breath hitched, followed by her voice shaking. "It's inside the walls. It's trying to remember me. It keeps asking." The tape cut out with a sound like splintering timber. Marina turned it off. Her hands were trembling. Before she could speak, the cabin itself groaned, a long, low exhale from the beams overhead. The lights dimmed. The air dropped another few degrees. Cashin spun with his lantern, eyes wide. "Elowen," Marina said, forcing calm. "Tell me what happened when she vanished." Elowen's gaze stayed locked on the floorboards. "She said the cabin kept calling her by a name that wasn't hers." A heavy thud echoed from the hallway. Marina froze. Cashin took a step back. Elowen whispered, "It's earlier than last time." The thud came again, closer, deliberate. And Marina realized with a cold certainty, whatever circled the cabin last night was now inside it. The sound in the hallway didn't repeat. It hung in the air like a challenge, daring Marina Vale to follow. Cashin Rourke muttered something under his breath and backed toward the door, but Elowen Gray stood frozen, gaze fixed on the narrow corridor as if she expected it to keep moving. When nothing came, Marina forced herself forward. The hallway stretched only a few yards, but the shadows felt heavier than they had any right to be. Marina flicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through dust-heavy air. The boards beneath her boots vibrated faintly, not enough to be movement, but enough to suggest memory. "Whatever made that sound," Marina whispered, "it came from here." Elowen didn't step closer. This part of the cabin was added later. She spent a lot of time in this wing. She, the woman who disappeared. Elara Quinn. Elowen's voice nearly cracked on the name. She was 24, smart, observant, and the cabin fixated on her in a way it never did with anyone else. Marina knelt near the wall where the thud had originated. The wood felt cold, colder than the hallway air. She pressed her palm against it. A pulse of icy pressure pressed back. She withdrew instantly. "That's not temperature," she murmured. Cashin hovered near the doorway. "Elara documented everything she could before she vanished. She said the cabin held onto emotions, that the walls absorbed whatever people brought into them." He swallowed. "She said it kept trying to talk to her." Marina frowned. "Talk how?" Cashin hesitated, then pointed at the floorboards. "She said it knocked answers." Marina exhaled slowly, leaning closer to the wall again. "Why didn't anyone tell me this before?" "Because," Elowen said quietly, "people think talking about it makes it stronger." Marina swept her flashlight along the floor. Something caught the beam, a thin seam between the boards. She pried it gently with a screwdriver until a loose plank lifted with a groan. Underneath was a shallow compartment, and in it, a small notebook, dusty, warped, pages curled with time and moisture. Elowen stiffened. That's hers. Marina brushed off dirt and opened it carefully. The first pages were filled with logs, dates, temperatures, system failures. Normal, clinical. But midway through, the handwriting changed, sharper, rushed, almost pressed into the page. It's learning the sound of my voice. The cabin knows when I'm alone. Sometimes I feel it remembering something through me. Last night it called me Astra. I don't know that name. Marina's breath caught. The word pulsed in her mind, Astra, unfamiliar, yet too precise to be random. Elowen, did you know about this? Elowen's eyes were glassy. I knew she wrote things down. I didn't know what. Marina flipped another page. A crude sketch filled it, the outline of a woman standing just inside the cabin door. No face, only a hollow oval where features should be. But the torso, the posture, Marina recognized it. It looked exactly like the silhouette she saw outside the night she arrived. Another line beneath the drawing read, "It watches even when it stands still." A cold tremor crawled beneath Marina's skin. Cashin moved closer, voice barely audible. There's more in the back. Marina opened to the final pages, blank except for a single line across the top. If it begins knocking again, don't answer. The hallway groaned. A slow, resonant shift of wood. Elowen grabbed Marina's arm. We shouldn't be in here. But Marina held the notebook tighter. This is why the cabin's active again. Something started the cycle she couldn't finish. Cashin's lantern flickered. She said it needed someone who felt too much. Someone grieving. Marina's pulse stilled. The cabin didn't just notice her arrival. It chose her. By late afternoon, the wind was gone and the trees looked frozen. Marina Vale stood on the porch with Alara Quinn's notebook, feeling the cabin's presence hanging over the clearing like an extra layer of air. One name kept pulsing in her mind. Astra, not hers. But the cabin seemed to like the way it sat behind her eyes. Elowen Gray walked the tree line in tight loops. Cashin Rourke stayed by the generator shed with his lantern already lit, though dusk was still an hour away. We need to know why it called her that, Marina said. Why use a different name at all? Cashin didn't look at her. Maybe it remembered someone else and tried to force Alara into that outline. And now it's trying to force me into it, Marina said. Elowen stopped pacing. It reacts to people who carry too much grief. Alara came right after her father died. She didn't talk, but the cabin noticed. A flash of hospital light tried to surface in Marina's mind. She shoved it down. I'm here to fix a system, she said. It doesn't get to decide what I'm here for. The boards under her boots vibrated, faint but deliberate, almost like disagreement. Inside, the air thickened. The light dimmed without clouds or sunset. Alara's notebook felt heavier as Marina crossed the main room, rereading one line. It mimics the sound of people you've lost, first far away, then in the next room. Cashin hovered near the doorway. We shouldn't stay after dark. That's when the pattern restarts. Good, Marina said. Patterns can be studied. The ceiling beams groaned in a low arc, not random settling. There was rhythm in it, a slow turning of weight above them. Then came the knock. One sharp rap against the hallway wall. A pause. A second exactly the same. Cashin's grip tightened on the lantern. Don't answer, that's what she wrote. Don't knock back, don't talk to it. The knocking stopped. Footsteps followed. Not outside this time. Inside. Starting deep in the hallway and moving toward the main room with careful, unhurried steps, as if whatever it was already knew there was nowhere for them to go. Elowen caught Marina's sleeve. Back away from the door. I need to see it, Marina whispered. The footsteps stopped just around the bend. Marina raised her flashlight. At the far end of the hall, a shadow stretched across the floorboards, long, distorted, wrong for the angle of the light. There was no body to cast it, just the shape itself. Then it moved. The shadow took one more step toward them before folding back into the darkness, retreating faster than it had arrived. The cabin exhaled. The lantern flame shrank, then flared. It's rehearsing, Cashin said. The last route she heard it walk. Marina hugged the notebook. What did she do? She went after it, Elowen whispered. room by room, step by step. And when the knocking stopped, so did her voice. The hallway creaked, a beckoning sound. The message was simple. The cabin wasn't chasing her. It was leading. Marina Vale didn't follow the shadow that night. She stepped only a few feet into the hallway and felt the cabin lean with her, boards sighing, air tightening. The footsteps were gone, but their echo clung like smoke. Her flashlight swept over warped wood and empty floor. Nothing that should have made a sound. Behind her, Elowen Gray stayed in the main room. Cashin Rourke hovered by the door, hand on the handle. "You don't have to go in," Cashin said. That's how it started for her. "It already started," Marina replied. She turned back before the hallway became an invitation. Elara Quinn's notebook waited on the table beside the cassette recorder. Marina opened it, skimming past the parts she already knew. "There's a pattern," she said. "Times, drops, sounds, it repeats." The early entries were neat. Timestamps, temperature changes, voltage spikes. Each anomaly clustered around 3 windows, dusk, midnight, pre-dawn. A cycle. Deeper in, the handwriting broke. "It only knocks when I'm alone. It says a name that isn't mine. Astra, Astra, Astra." Marina whispered the name. The light dimmed a fraction. A thin draft stroked the back of her neck and vanished. "Elowen," Marina said. "You've heard that name before." Silence stretched. "Not in this cabin," Elowen answered at last. Cashin stared at her. "Tell her." Elowen's shoulders sagged. "When I was a kid, there was a woman farther in the forest. My mother called her a wanderer. People called her Trouble. She lived alone until a storm took her. They never found the body. Just a ruined camp." "Astra," Marina said. Elowen nodded. "She used to say places remember us longer than people do." Marina looked at the beams, the seams in the floor, the cracks in the corners. "Maybe this place remembers her better than anyone." "Or wants to," Cashin said. "Elara came right after her father died. The grief was fresh. The cabin latched on. Maybe it thought she could fill the gap." "And now it's testing me," Marina murmured. Near the back of the notebook, one line sat alone on an otherwise blank page. "If it learns your deepest loss, it will speak with that voice. Don't let it." Her chest tightened. She didn't need to imagine which voice it would copy. "We're not pretending this is nothing," she said. "That didn't save Elara. We treat it like what it acts like, a loop with rules." Cashin frowned. "Rules that end with someone walking into the trees." "Which means it needs cooperation," Marina said. "Tonight, when it starts again, we stay together. One room. We record every knock, every step, which wall, which direction. We write down the path it wants me to walk." Elowen's eyes were wide. "And then I stop early," Marina said. "Where Elara didn't, I refuse the last step." Above them, the beams groaned, a long, dragging arc, as if something shifted its weight in the ceiling. "You think it will let you do that?" Elowen whispered. Marina pressed her palm flat to the table. The wood hummed faintly under her skin. "Loops break when you interrupt them," she said. "If I'm wrong, it was going to take someone anyway." Outside, the clearing darkened. Dusk was coming again. The cabin felt different the moment dusk slipped between the trees. Not colder, not darker, just aware. Marina Vale sat at the table with Elowen Gray and Cashin Rourke. The lantern dimmed to a soft glow. Her recorder blinked red, ready. Elara Quinn's notebook lay open beside her, the last warning underlined twice. "Don't let it speak with the voice you've lost." Marina tried not to think of that voice. The first knock came exactly when she expected it, one sharp rap from the far hallway, then another. Then silence so deep it hummed. "It wants you to stand," Cashin whispered. Marina rose. The floorboards shifted with her as if the cabin adjusted its posture. She lifted the recorder and clicked it on. "Knock 1, South Hall," she murmured. A second pair of knocks followed, farther left, near the bedroom door. 2 beats, too even to be random. Elowen stepped closer. "It's mapping the path again." Marina moved only a few feet toward the hall. The air thickened instantly, like walking into pressure. Shadows trembled along the walls, not from the lantern, but from something moving behind the wood. The third knock came from the floor itself, a hollow thud beneath her boots. Cassian cursed. "That's new," Marina crouched. Her fingers hovered over the boards. A pulse vibrated through them, faint but steady, like a heartbeat timed to the knocking. "You're close," Elowen whispered. "That's where she stopped the first night." Marina stood again, but didn't step forward. "I'm not repeating her pattern," she said. The cabin disagreed. A slow shift rolled through the hallway, wood bending inward, a long exhale pressing against the air. The lantern flickered violently. Then footsteps emerged from the dark, soft at first, then heavier, then impossibly close. Marina raised the flashlight. The beam caught nothing but the empty passage, but the steps kept coming. A shape slid across the far wall, only an outline like a person drawn in smoke. No face, no edges, just a suggestion of someone walking toward them. Then it spoke. Not aloud, not through air, through the wood. A low vibration formed words Marina felt more than heard. "Astra, come back." Her breath caught in her throat. The cabin began to mimic a voice beneath the name. Familiar vowels, familiar rhythm, just one syllable away from becoming a ghost she wasn't ready to face. "No," Marina said sharply. "You don't get that." She stepped back into the main room, breaking the direction of the knocks. The footsteps halted. The shadow froze. The air tightened as if the cabin braced against her choice. Then everything cracked. The hallway door slammed. The beams groaned like something dragging claws across them. The lantern shrieked in its metal frame, flames stretching sideways as if pulled by unseen hands. Cassian shouted, "It's trying to force the last step." The cabin lurched. Not metaphorically, physically. Like the whole structure shifted half an inch to the left, pulled by a gravity that didn't exist anywhere outside these walls. Marina planted her hands on the table. "You wanted Alara to follow. I'm not Alara." The heartbeat under the floor grew violent. The name rumbled again. "Astra, not me," she snapped. The recorder in her hand burst into static. The lights died. The world shrank to darkness and vibration. Then everything stopped. The air, the movement, the sound, a sudden, crushing stillness. Elowen whispered, "Did it give up?" Marina listened, not with her ears, with the awareness she'd grown since arriving. And she felt it, the cabin's shock, its confusion, its cycle broken mid-pattern. She had interrupted the ritual, but something in the dark was still deciding what to do about it. And the night wasn't over. The silence after the cabin stopped was the wrong kind of quiet, tight and waiting. Marina Vale stood in the dark with Elowen Gray and Cassian Rourke beside her. The walls no longer pulsed. The floor no longer knocked. Whatever had moved beneath the wood was still, stunned by the broken cycle. The lantern sputtered back to life, weak but steady. The room looked the same, but the air felt hollow, like something huge had exhaled and hadn't drawn breath again. Cassian cleared his throat. "If it stopped, are we finished?" "No," Marina said. The certainty sat cold behind her ribs. "It lost its script. It's deciding what to do next." Elowen stepped toward the hallway where the shadow had walked. The darkness there was only darkness now. "It doesn't know how to end," she whispered. They waited. No knocks, no footsteps, no voice. By dawn, the pressure had thinned. The air warmed a little. Birds tried a few hesitant calls around the clearing. Cassian opened the door, blinking into the gray morning. "Quiet!" "For the first time in years," Elowen said. Marina stepped outside. The forest smelled ordinary earth, sap, damp bark. It should have comforted her. It didn't. "You stopped it," Elowen said. "I interrupted it," Marina replied. They packed in silence. Cassian killed the generator, leaving the cabin without even the hum of power. Marina slid Alara Quinn's notebook into her bag. As she crossed the clearing, the cabin released one low groan. Not threatening, not pleading, just aware. Marina didn't look back. The drive out of the forest felt longer than the path in. Trees leaned close over the road. branches knitting into a tunnel that seemed reluctant to let her go. When signal finally returned to her comm, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. City lights rose ahead, anonymous windows, moving traffic neon. Her apartment met her with soft clutter and electric warmth. Lamps, a worn couch, the steady hum of the refrigerator. Nothing here had knots of old grief pressed into the beams. She showered, changed, then collapsed onto the bed without turning off the light. Sleep came fast, heavy, until she woke with the sense of being watched. No sound, no movement, just air that felt too tight. Marina lay still, listening. The shadows were ordinary. The window was latched. Distant traffic murmured. Nothing moved until the walls drew a slow, careful breath. It was almost silent, more pressure than sound, but she knew that rhythm. The same measured inhale she had heard in the cabin. A name gathered in the quiet, pushed up from memory. Astra. Marina sat upright, heart stumbling. The breath faded. The room went still. Yet the air around her bed held the echo of that impossible inhale. The forest had let her go. The cabin had not. It had found a new set of walls to live inside, and they were hers.